One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's Bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. So there's a really awkward, difficult subject that we need to talk about today. And that is called the Podfade. Yes, you're like, wait, I've heard this before. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're just like, wait, is that something to do with podcasting fading away? There's so many things and so many reasons why Podfade is something that you need to know about, and why is it important? Okay, we're going to cover a lot today. It's probably going to bring up some triggers and emotional baggage that if you've experienced this, maybe a little shame. If you're like, ooh, this is me. I have done this. I have experienced this. And it's okay. Just think of this as you're walking into our beautiful little podcast therapy bubble. That's what this is going to be today, because we really need to talk about this. This is something that I often talk about with really close friends of mine. I don't have a lot of like stranger podcasters that come to me that tell me about this, because I think that there's a lot of guilt and shame around it, which is why we need to talk about it. Because I learned from Brene Brown that you don't keep things like that inside. We need to talk about it, okay? Like I said, this is basically, we're in a therapy session now. So just buckle up, because we're just going to get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? So I've been looking at some of the episodes that I've done, and I am thinking, we're really tapping into some of the things, like if I was a podcast therapist, which I have been for some of my friends that have come to me and said, can I tell you about something that I'm experiencing? Like, I feel like I've put on this, I don't know. I think that I just have that face or that personality that people are like, I think I could talk to Crystal, and I think that she would tell me straight up what's really going on or what I should do. But I feel also like this should be a disclaimer, like listen to everything and take it with a grain of salt, because obviously I'm not a therapist in any kind of way, but I have dealt with a lot of really hard conversations about podcasting and what happens if you just stop, and how do you come back from it, and what does it look like whenever you just kind of walk away for a few months, but then you decide I want to come back, but do I need to rebrand? Do I need to do all the, like, I have heard so many questions from really good friends of mine and it's really funny. Okay, so I get this a lot. people are afraid to tell me that they stop podcasting. They want to talk about all their other things, right? Like, let's talk about our email list and what's going on with your lunch and what's going on with this. But I will physically see, I've talked to several of my friends, like on a conference call, I will see their shoulders like hunched down. And like whenever I ask them, well, how's your podcast going? Like their whole body language changes and they're like, I don't really want to talk about it. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what's going on? And they're like, well, because you're so into podcasting and you're so consistent with your show. And I kind of stopped doing it a few months ago and I haven't looked back and I haven't really created a plan on how I'm going to return. And it makes me really nervous. And I feel like you're going to yell at me and you're going to get on to me. Like, I don't know. So apparently I put off the vibe of like, oh, come and talk to me. Like you can tell me anything, but also I'm going to whip you into shape and be your coach and give you the tough love that you need. I don't know. I mean, this is really who I am in real life. So that makes sense. But I also feel like I don't want to be like the parent that's scolding the child for not picking up your room, right? Like I don't want us to have that kind of relationship. So I want to get into the tough love coach hat, the therapist. I can do that. Okay. I can play these roles in your life if you need me to be your podcast therapist. But I want to dive into what is podfade or podfading, or if you've podfaded. It all sounds really strange to me, right? It's not a term that if you're not in the online space, if you're not in the podcast space, you've probably never heard this before. So if this is your first time listening, you're like, wait, this is a real thing. Just stick around. Just welcome to the podcast world. This actually happens more than people talk about, which is why we're talking about it today, because I don't want you to podfade and then say, I don't know how to come back from this. What am I actually supposed to do? So podfading is simply not publishing your podcast as consistently as you intended, like whatever your expectations were whenever you started your show. Maybe you're like, okay, I was going to publish every Tuesday, but then I got caught up in my day job or with my family or something happened and you're just like, I haven't published a new episode in 6 weeks and people have been asking me about it and I don't really know what to do. Like, do I come back to it? Do I do something different? This is what I mean by podfade. And sometimes it just happens as like a reckless abandonment where I know people all the time that they don't even get past, 6 episodes and they're done. They realize podcasting was not for me. I made a huge mistake. It's almost like having commitment issues. Like they can't commit to their podcast because they are trying to grow their email list. They're trying to create an online business. They want to create a course. They want to do a YouTube channel. Like there's so many things. And the podcast just falls to the wayside. I see this happening all the time. And I'm here to tell you, it's okay. Like you can come back from it. But I also want to let you know that, I just came back from Podcast Movement recently, and the same thing was said in almost every single session I attended. And if there was a successful podcaster on stage, the through line of all of it was consistency. Consistency, consistency, consistency. And even in my own business and in my own content creation journey, I have found that my consistency is the thing that I'm known for and the thing that has paid off really well for me. So I get it when people come to me, they're like, I don't want to tell you about my non-consistency issues, like my inconsistency, not non-consistency, inconsistency. That is the correct word. One day I will figure out the English language and grammar, but it is not today. Okay. It is not in this episode. That's not going to happen. But I think that people just get nervous coming to me and tell me they have this issue. And this is why it's almost like I said, going to a therapist, because then they think, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I have this problem. I quit posting, I quit publishing on my podcast, and now I just don't know what to do. So I wanted to, before we dive into how to kind of evaluate the problem and really see what's going on, I wanted to give you some other examples of why some podcasts podfade, because if you're just getting started and you're like, I don't want this to happen to me, like what, how did this happen? Like, what do you mean? I'm excited about podcasting. It's going to be the thing that, drives me out of bed every single day for the rest of my life. I mean, that's kind of how I am. So this is my job to be the cheerleader, the one that's always enthusiastic and excited to talk about podcasting. Like, I feel like that is my job. But life also happens while you're podcasting, right? Your kid gets sick. You have to suddenly attend to a family emergency. You have to go out of town. You start feeling overwhelmed. And then you say, well, I don't have time for this. Or I don't even know what to do next. I put this episode out. It did terribly. Then my last 5 episodes just really didn't perform how I thought. So I don't even know what to do next. And then some people tell me, well, I've been doing this for a while by myself, but now I need a co-host. And other people tell me my co-host isn't as invested in this as I am. So I don't know if I should pivot. I don't know if I should quit. I can't find any guest. Like all the guests that I've tried to book, they bail on me. They cancel last minute, or they just don't show up at all. Or maybe you've lost all motivation. These are all the reasons why I hear people tell me they stopped publishing their podcast. And like I said, that is okay. Like we can come back from this. This is not the end of the world if any of these things have happened. It just means you're human, right? And your life happens. Like your life is constantly happening. It doesn't just stop and revolve around your podcast. And I don't want it to. I don't want your whole life to revolve around, when am I going to publish my podcast? When do I need to record the next one? Did I publish that video clip on Instagram? Did I post it in our Facebook group? Like I don't want it to constantly be something that you're overwhelmed with. I want it to be the other way around. I want you to plan your podcast around your life. So one of the reasons why I often see people pod fading is time. That is really one of the biggest ones, is I just don't have time for it. Yes, there may be some other like sub ideas, sub reasons, if you want to call them that. I'm thinking of the word subtopics, but that's not the right thing. You know what I'm trying to say, right? Like sub reasons why they don't have time. Maybe it's poor management on their part. Maybe it's they don't have a good workflow, or maybe they just set too high of expectations. This is often, honestly, from a coaching perspective, I see y'all. I know y'all are an ambitious group of podcasters. You're like, I want to have show notes like Amy Porterfield, and I want to have everything look like Pat Flynn's podcast, and I want to have this and I want to have that. Like y'all tell me these things, and I say, do you have a full team of people behind you? Do you? Do you have someone that runs your entire marketing department? Do you have someone else that's worried about all the 17 other things that you have to do in your business or in your personal life? No? Okay, well then we need to lower the bar a little bit, okay? We need to reset our expectations, because when you say you don't have time, the reality is I think that you've set the bar way too high. And I'm going to tell you this just as plainly as possible, because if we were sitting here or we're having a cup of coffee together, this is exactly what I would tell you. And I know some of you are going to roll your eyes and say, Crystal, you really shouldn't say that, but I'm just going to be really honest. I try to set the bar pretty low in many areas of my life. I do. I don't try to be like, oh, I'm gonna make $1 million the first time I go out and start my business, and I'm gonna run a marathon in the first 6 months that I start training, and all. Like I set it pretty low. I'm a pretty low maintenance person anyway, and I don't like the idea of having this expectation on me. And the reason why is because I'm a recovering perfectionist. If you've heard any of the interviews that we do on the show, I always ask 3 questions. And one of them is, do you consider yourself a perfectionist? And most of the time, people will say, I used to, or I'm a recovering perfectionist. We have a lot of them on this show. Okay, we have a lot of them. So if that is you, you are in good company. You are absolutely in good company. But I also want you to know that beating yourself up and saying, oh my gosh, your show isn't as good as whoever else, like fill in the blank, that's not good. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that anymore. Okay, so we're going to talk about how you can make a comeback if you've hit this, obstacle of Podfade, because we're not going to say that this is the death of your show. We're not going to go, put some RIP sign sticker across your artwork and say, sorry, we tried. Like, we just got to put this one to bed. We got to lay it to rest. No, there are ways that you can come back if you have Podfaded with your podcast. So, number 1, and you're going to say, Crystal, that's too simple. That's just, it can't be that easy.
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
Yes, it can. Number 1 is just start publishing again. And I kind of wince a little bit when I say that, because I will say that to other people and they say, well, no, like it can't be that easy. Like I can't, like so much time has passed. Like you don't understand. It's been 6 months. It's been 8 weeks and I haven't published anything. I haven't done anything. They've probably have put out Amber Alerts and they're wondering where I am. They probably, put those posters up around their neighborhood saying, where did Crystal go? I don't know where she is. I can't find her. No, they didn't. No, they didn't, because most people are more concerned about what's going on in their own world, their own lives. And if you just so happen to stop podcasting and you're not showing up consistently, they probably forgot about you. Ooh, here comes the tough love. Ooh, that's when it hurts, right? We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that people forgot about our show, but that is the reality. If you've been gone for 6 months, there's a good chance people forgot about you. But it's okay, because you can just start publishing again and say, hey, I'm back. Like we took a little hiatus, but I'm ready to jump back in there. And so whenever I tell people that, I do get a lot of pushback and they say it can't just be that easy. Yes, it can be. I think we make it a lot more complicated. And I'm going to talk about some of the other ways that you can come back, but the first is to just start publishing again. Just slip right back into the groove, right back where you were, if that's the direction you want to go. Now, I'm going to put some resources in the show notes, because if you want to rebrand, if you're like, Crystal, I don't think this is right for me. I think I want to rebrand. Maybe I want to try a co-host. I have a few podcast episodes that would be great for you to check out and listen to if you're like in that mindset of like, maybe I need to change things up before I just start publishing again. That's cool. That's cool. I have stuff on pivoting your content, changing directions, all of that. It's all going to be in the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 281. But you can absolutely just start publishing again. Now, that's the first way. The second is you can make an announcement episode. Now, if you've been on a hiatus for 6 weeks or 6 months, you could absolutely come out with a short episode that says, hey, you could explain why you were gone, or you could just say, hey, did you miss us? I know we were gone for a little bit, but we're coming back. We've been working on some incredible content, and you're going to see our next episode dropping on, and you can give them a date. And then it's done. People who are already subscribed to your show will get a notification, or brand new listeners that are maybe stumble upon your show will get that information as well. But don't make it such a big deal. I think that we make it a lot bigger in our heads because it's about our show. But in reality, your listeners might have forgotten about you. It sounds really hard to say every time I say that. I'm like, oh, it is. It's hard to say because it's difficult to hear. I think about oh, if people forgot about me, they would just make me so sad. It kind of breaks your heart a little bit, right? But it's the truth. So if you do want to make an announcement and say, hey, these are the changes coming, or we decided that Tuesdays didn't work for us, so we're going to publish on Mondays, whatever kind of announcement you want to make, you can absolutely do that. But don't feel like you have to. You can just start publishing. And then the third option is you could just start a new season. You can write all of your previous content off as season 1, and then come back and you're like, all right, we're back for season 2. It's not a bait and switch, but it is a little bit more of hey, we stopped, we know we were gone. We're acknowledging that we've been gone for a while, but we're actually going a different direction. And we decided this is season 2. We are back. These are a few options for you. And like I said in the beginning, take all this with a grain of salt. Do this whatever way feels most authentic, most true to you. You're going to be able to put your head on your pillow at the end of the night and be like, you know what? I felt really good about doing it that way. Only you can make that decision for sure. But I don't want you walking around saying, I stopped podcasting 6 months ago and I don't really know how to get back into it. I think of it those people, we all know, we've all probably been those people too. January 1st comes around and you're like, I'm going to get into the best shape of my life. I bought all the kale. The people at the store were like, ma'am, why do you have so many fruits and vegetables? And I'm like, I'm going to eat a smoothie every day for the rest of my life because I'm going to look so hot in a bikini this year. I've actually never said that out loud, and I don't really, that's not a life goal of mine, but it is on January 1st most of the time. I'm like, this is the year I'm going to have the hot girl body and it's going to happen. And then what happens? We all know. We go to the gym. We're motivated. We're like, yes, this is going to be my year. I'm going to make it happen. And then by February 8th, we're like, kale really is hard to chew. I'm done eating it. If I have to drink one more liquid meal, right? A whole meal that's just liquid, I'm going to vomit. This is not for me. And you kind of slip out of it a little bit. And you're like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to run 3 miles every time. Maybe I could just walk. Maybe, I got off the couch for a few hours the other day. And that was good. I got up and I walked to the fridge and then to the pantry and I went to go check the mail. This is good enough, right? I told y'all about my low expectations, right? But I'm just saying, we all slip in and out of things. Our habits change, our lives change. And sometimes we just have to do something different. And I just want to let you know it's okay. As much as I want you to be consistent and you publish on a regular basis, don't be so hard on yourself. So if you have Podfaded, if you've experienced this, my biggest recommendation for you is to, before you start publishing again, no matter which way you decide to come back, ask yourself, am I still having fun doing this podcast? And if you're not, ask yourself why. Why? Is it the topic? Is it the audience? Is it your co-host? Is it the guest that you're having on? Why? Why did the Podfade happen in the first place? And if it truly is time, I hope you stick around and you get more information from this podcast, from our YouTube channel, and you learn how to use your time more effectively and more efficiently because that's what I'm here for. This is literally my job. This is literally my job to be your podcast coach, to be your podcast therapist, and to give you some of this tough love whenever you need it, because I know you need it. Because you wouldn't be asking me these questions in the DMs and sending me emails telling me about your struggles if you didn't need it. If one of you is asking the question, then 10 or 20 of you probably have the exact same struggle that you're going through. And you're not supposed to do it alone, okay? You're not supposed to be podfading, like slipping into a mist, like what I'm trying to think of the abyss, but that's not the right thing. Like slipping into oblivion. That was the word. See, going back to the big words in the grammar, like I shouldn't do it. I need to set the bar lower. Don't try to talk like you're a lot fancier than you are, Crystal. Let's just keep everything really simple around here because you're going to embarrass yourself. Okay? Yeah, this is how it happens. Okay. So all the things we talked about, all the resources, crystalprofit.com/episode 281. And if you are listening to this in real time and you are struggling to get back on the horse, to get started, to get going again, or start your podcast for the very first time, I want you to sign up for our free 5-day challenge. We're actually doing this live in the month of August. We are doing this from August 23rd to August 27th. It's our first ever 5-day challenge. We've done boot camps in the past and other things, but this is something totally different. And I want you to be a part of it. So go to the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 281 for all the details and to sign up. And I hope that you will join us there. Even if you already have a podcast and you're like, what's this challenge all about? We would love to have you. It's going to be so fun. Again, it's going to be August 23rd through August 27th, 2021. And it's just, we're going to have live Q&A. We're going to have we're going to have giveaways. I feel like one of those Oprah moments, like, oh, you get a car. I'm not giving away cars. Like, disclaimer, we're not giving away cars. But I do have some really fun stuff that came home with me from Podcast Movement that I can't wait to give away to our challenge people. So make sure you come. All the information is going to be in the show notes, and that's all I have for you today. So if you are experiencing Podfade or you have and you don't know how to come back for it, re-listen to this episode over and over again. Get some new ideas. Reach out in our Facebook group, and I am just so excited to see you make a comeback. It's your time. It is your time to start publishing your podcast again. But that's all I have for you today. So one last time, crystalprofit.com/episode 281 for the show notes and everything that we talked about today. And if this is your first time tuning in, make sure you hit that follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast. And we would love to hear from you. How are we doing? Can you rate and review this show? Because that is what helps us get this podcast in front of more people. And I would love to hear what you think about the show. But that's all I have for you today. So as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.